Hi, my name is Attorney Walter Wolfnaut III. I'm with Disability Resolution PA. We're going to be going through in this video the 10 ways law firms have changed over the past 10 years. And I think that this is really important because law firms, they used to be like these really old-styled bank buildings, and you would go in and it was just all this marble and this and that, and just nothing ever felt good in those buildings because they were designed to make you feel small. And now, law firms are very different. But let's go through these top 10 things, or at least what I'm saying are the 10 things that have changed for law firms over the past 10 years. Number one, there aren't many traditional old-school bank building law firms left. Sure, they could have great attorneys in them still, if they do exist, but they didn't advertise properly. As you've seen, the big box firms that have basically, gone through this structure of advertise, they were the ones that continued to succeed over time. And the reason why is that even if you have great attorneys getting, really big settlements or really big findings, after a court, or representing really high-level, individuals in a criminal situation where they're making lots and lots of money, even if they made lots of money, if their name isn't out there, they're not going to get the next client. Having that whole thing where you're like, well, this person will tell that person, this person, it doesn't exist like that anymore. It existed like that in the 70s, did in the 80s, doesn't exist like that anymore. So basically, pretty much the firms that mass advertise, those are the ones that continue to stay big. Are they the best firms? No. I can assure you that they are not the best firms from the ones that I have personally seen and in my opinion. But with that said, you can make your own, figure out whether you like that firm or not. But just consider those mega advertising firms, they got there because of mega advertising. They did not get there usually because of essentially how they would win the claims. That's the point I'm trying to make here so that you understand, when you see the billboard, that's something to keep in mind, okay? Number two, law firms that advertised within the lawyer community tend to slowly erode. If you can't get your message to the people about who you are, then you are doomed to fail. So there are still a bunch of law firms out there that are advertising in these attorney or lawyer or, county-based or, bar, whatever, newspapers, magazines, whatever, websites, etc. The problem with this is that essentially those individuals that are advertising in these, classic legal publications, your Martindale Hubbles, your this and that, they're just not getting their name out there to the right people. And the reason why is most law firms that take claims nowadays, a lot of law firms that are still out there practicing that used to be really, really big and now they're kind of like medium big, they're just doing whatever law comes through the door in a lot of instances because they're just trying to get that business rolling. So it's one of those situations where instead of a law firm saying, hey, we don't take this claim, we'll shoot it over there, and we do that all the time because we're just doing disability law at this point, but these other law firms are like, okay, cool, yeah, we'll take a look at your claim, yada yada, and then they'll do that claim because they're just doing what comes through the door essentially. And the reason why that is that when you advertise through these lawyer-related magazines and stuff like that to other lawyers to send you business, a lot of the other lawyers are just not going to send the business because they're just going to do the business themselves. Okay. Number three, law firms incorporate their family members and their dogs now, similar to how politicians leverage homemaker similarities with basically your advertising. We all see basically attorneys utilizing dogs in their advertisements and stuff like that. Mine obviously are right over there on the couch. If they wanted to join me, they could. But the bottom line is that lawyers are using advertising more like, I would say, politicians than like traditional lawyers. If you go back to the original lawyer advertisements, they looked very different than the ones we see nowadays. Okay. Number four, all law firms have had to become media production warehouses between online articles and online videos. So one of the big things here is that online, it will eventually completely replace even billboards. And I know that sounds crazy, but billboards are the last remnant of anything that was, or like the big bus billboards. Those are the last remnants of physical advertisements that you would see, in the outdoors and stuff like that. You might see a bench here and there and stuff like that, but those are the last remnants of essentially outdoor advertising that you're going to be seeing for attorneys. It is extremely expensive to go ahead and do billboard advertising. And frankly, a lot of people are getting more, business directly through the internet and things like that. 5, law firms have extreme overhead now, being that insurance is too expensive, employees expect higher wages, and significant expenses go to advertising and creating advertisements, aka not the cash cows that they once were. Very true. PI still seems to be a big cash cow industry, the slip and falls, the, A hurt B and B is suing A, that kind of stuff. But yeah, law firms are not the cash cows that they really used to be back in the 80s and the 90s. 70s, the 60s, etc. And the bottom line with that is that, you know, law firms used to represent individuals, and as a result of that, they would get a decent pay. But now a lot of that money that they receive goes into all kinds of things, you know, whether it's from, you know, their CMS system or the client management system to, you know, the computers they have to keep buying to whatever. So one of the unfortunate things is just it's becoming more and more expensive to run a law firm every single year that exists. Some would argue against that. They would say, oh, technology has made things so much faster. Technology has made things so much better. That would be true, but for the fact that there are so many attorneys out there, there are so many lawyers now competing, that basically there's so many more options for people to buy into, that the cash cow of you being the only one in that county or that town or whatever, it's just died away. Number 6, in-person meetings have nearly disappeared from law firms, and this was even happening before COVID was ever mentioned or even existed or whatever. So the bottom line is, a lot of people, when they wanted to go hire an attorney, they would go to that attorney's office and they would talk to them. They would sit down at one of those, you know, classic long, you know, conference room tables, and they would go through the facts of the claim. They would go through the fact pattern. But nowadays, nobody's really doing that at the same level that they were back in the day, unless it's a very, very high-level claim. Otherwise, people just literally call them, send them things via email, etc. Because to spend that time to have to meet with somebody in person, you're throwing away an hour to 2 hours, which could have been probably done in like a half an hour. So, and if it's a 3 to 4 to 5 hour meeting, it could have been done in an hour to 2 hour meeting. So, you know, digitally and things like that. So kind of the bottom line is I do not foresee law firms having a lot of traditional offices going to the future. For what I see is basically lawyers becoming more and more digitized in the sense of communicating with clients through video teleconference or over the phone. 7. While alcoholism seems to be on the decline for attorneys and judges, anxiety and depression seem to be on the rise based upon statistics that are coming out. Many attorneys go into real estate because the aggressive clients, judges, and caseload create a slave abuse-like life, and that's a sad truth of it. Attorneys live in a high stress, constant stress atmosphere where they're constantly being watched over by attorney groups, constantly being watched over by the government, constantly being watched over by clients, constantly being demanded of things. The judges are always, you know, yelling at them. Well, why don't I have this record? When are we going to do this? Okay, when is the motion going to be filed? All that stuff. And the reality of it is this. A lot of attorneys are getting their law degree, they practice law for a while, and then they go into some other field because they just don't want to put up with it. I know a lot of you guys sit back and go, well, you know, I want my attorney to do this, and this, and some of you guys can't get a hold of your attorney, and I totally understand that you're aggravated with them. But the ones that you can get a hold of, if you're one of those aggressive, I'm going to demand from you types, think about you and then multiply that by 100, and that's a small percentage of the people that they've got to deal with that are always like, hey, I want this, I want it now, you know. And if you can't think of it from an attorney's perspective, think of it kind of like from a waitress's perspective. Think of it as like she's working in a restaurant. She has to go around and tell patrons that they can't smoke in the restaurant. There's a patron smoking. She tells them they can't smoke, and then the patron starts yelling at them that they're going to smoke no matter what. You know, and that's like a little example of kind of the stuff we deal with, except we deal with usually more literally life and death situation orientation. So, for example, if you had to go ahead and, you know, win disability benefits, otherwise the person would be homeless, or if you had to, you know, win this med mal for them to get further money to go ahead and get further medical treatment, or you had to win this, you know, criminal law claim to get somebody, you know, not put in jail when they clearly did, yeah, any one of these, it's just a lot more life or death situations. Okay. Number 8, attorneys are getting married and having children later and later in their life. This is due to student loans causing financial insecurity, and attorneys usually marrying other professionals who are living in a similarly busy lifestyle. So basically, the status quo for and everything's changed. You know, 10 years ago, marriage was still more of a thing. More people were getting married. 20 years ago, marriage was the thing. 30, 40, 50, 60, marriage was like, you know, every 10 years, and I should probably do a video on that, but every 10 years, marriage means something else. You know, marriage equates to something else. And unfortunately now, based on the slavery system that we have, based on student loans, we are going to see people getting married later and later and later in life because of the structure of having to pay off these student loans. Number 9, many law firms are falling into the business consolidation game where larger companies and law firms purchase up their competition, leaving you with fewer options. So in the not too distant future, because of what's going on with COVID and the whole reshaping of this entire industry, most law firms that are online and advertising online and things like that, they're going to do very well. A lot of the attorneys that are not doing that stuff, their entire firm is in complete, total destruction, chaos mode. And what I want to have you understand here is this. The unfortunate thing about what's going on with this situation is that mega big box firms that have money because they were doing the advertisements correctly to get more clients, they'll buy up, just like Home Depot and Lowe's and, Better Bath & Beyond and Walmart and this. These mega companies will buy up the smaller companies. We call this business consolidation. And when they do that, you, the consumer, lose out because then you don't have as many choices for basically representation in law, which means you basically get stuck with a firm that maybe you like, maybe you won't like. Okay, next one, number 10. Most people don't know how to search for law firms to get a diversity of opinions, so they just Google and call the top 1 or 3 firms. This allows Google to reap in millions from mega advertising law firms. So these mega big box firms will put down, $50,000 a month into Google or, one of these other groups to go ahead and advertise. And when they do that, they basically get their name right at the very top of what's going on. It's a pay-to-play game. There's other factors, based on reviews and stuff like that as to how far up you show up. But the bottom line is it's mostly a pay-to-play game. And as a mostly pay-to-play game, the mega big box firms, usually in PI, are always at the top. That will then do other areas of law as like a throw-in with their PI business. So my suggestion to you guys is don't essentially just go to what's at the top of Google. Search around and look at reviews. And remember now, reviews aren't even becoming like a thing that's really helpful either, because these mega big box firms have entire marketing divisions and all they do is focus on getting positive reviews. So even then, they make a business out of positive reviews. It's like it's just a cycle of how you take over an industry. That's basically what it is. Number 11, law firms used to have a personal touch or something unique about them, but now most clients rarely get to interact with the attorney and only talk to the paralegal. So what's happening is, because of this whole business consolidation thing, you have essentially fewer attorneys communicating with their clients. You have more receptionists communicating with the client, and the receptionist will ask the attorney if something pops up, or if the attorney has to contact you, they'll do it. It's just less interaction with the attorney. Way back in the day, there were receptionists. There was a formalistic kind of like, here's this level, here's how I get to the attorney. But the bottom line was you were still able to get a hold of the attorney because the attorney was usually working that claim, knew the claim, etc. It's not like that anymore. The way a lot of these firms work, there's so many claims just to make enough money to do everything. A lot of attorneys are losing touch with specifically what that claim is about, what makes that claim unique. There are certain fields that are really bad with that. Disability benefits are really bad with that because of an extremely high caseload. Workers' comp claims are really bad with that, extremely high caseload. VA benefits are really bad with that, extremely high caseload. And just so you know, like the number one thing that attorneys would do to go ahead and make it seem like there was that personal touch where they remembered you and everything was great, they'll write down in the file in the very beginning all the little personal touches that you would put on your story, and they would put that, I like to go fishing. They'd put that into your file. And what they would do is, if you were to go ahead and meet with them, what would happen is they would go look up your file, look at those things, refresh their memory about those little things that make you you, and then when they'd see it, they'd be like, hey, have you been fishing recently? And that's how they do it. Doctors do the same thing, same kind of gig. They pull up the file, they remember, and then kind of go from there. These are the top, or at least 10 things as to how law firms have changed over the past 10 years. I hope this helped you guys out with understanding specifically that law firms are going to be something very different, especially after this whole COVID interaction. My name is Attorney Walter, if not the third. I'm with Disability Resolution PA. Keep in mind, I go live 8 to 10 every Thursday on YouTube, Eastern Standard Time. You want to catch up with me then? That's fine. Go ahead and give me a call then, because I donate 2 hours to everybody and anybody that wants to call in. Have an absolutely wonderful night, and I'll catch you a little bit later. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.